purpose of tonight is really to discuss Bishopbriggs Triathlon. We've got with us Stuart Milne, who is the race director of the event, and he'll be able to go through all of the event rules and answer a lot of questions about what happens on the day. And we've also got Sean Webster, who is the head coach of Glasgow Triathlon Club, and will be able to give some tips and tricks about how to do a triathlon if you've never done one before, or if you have done one before, he might be able to offer you some advice and really help out. I'm Ian Todd. I am president of Glasgow Triathlon Club, which sounds a very official title, but basically it just means I send out emails asking people to turn up at events and do things like this. My purpose today is just to sort of go through the agenda, just keep things on track to make sure we cover everything. Hopefully the majority of the talking will be Stuart and Sean being able to go through it. Just I have to offer one apology first. We did try and get a female coach tonight, but unfortunately there wasn't one available. So I am conscious that we are three white middle-aged men doing this, but yeah, sorry about that. Let me try and share the slides. Oh yeah, the other bit of housekeeping. Everyone's on mute, just keep the noise down. If you have any questions, it would be preferable if you could just type them into the chat window as we go along, just so we can keep track of anything, and I'll then run through them at the end. I will have an opportunity at the end just to ask if people want to speak, but it'd probably be quicker if we just do it through chat than trying to ask anything else. Looks over there. Let me try and share my window. Right, share that, and I think if I then do the slides, it should pop up. Okay, Stuart and Sean, can you see the slides okay? These are the only ones not on mute.
No, not so far, no.
No, don't come up, no sound.
Oh, yep, screen sharing, there we go.
Yeah, I'm beginning. Yep, you can see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So first introduction, done the introductions. Just a quick one, first triathlon experience, just to explain our own backgrounds. My first triathlon was at Bishopbriggs, and the one race tip that I could give was after the event, I could not for the life of me remember where my car was parked, and I had to go through the whole of Bishopbriggs back streets with all of my stuff trying to find it. So therefore, my one tip, remember where to park your car. Stuart, what was your first experience?
My first triathlon was the Stirling Sprint Triathlon back in 2004. And I remember I didn't really know much about triathlon, couldn't swim terribly well, and my swim time was 18 minutes. And then shortly after that, I joined Glasgow Triathlon Club and did the Aberfeldy pool-based sprint, and I dropped my swim time by 2 minutes within 2 months. So I think it just goes to show that joining a club and getting some proper swim coaching actually makes a huge difference to your performance and your enjoyment on the day. Yeah,
and if you are going to join a club, we recommend Glasgow Triathlon Club.
Definitely.
And Sean, first experience?
My first triathlon was what would be a standard, and it was in Cumnock in their outdoor pool, which was something bizarre, like 24 meters long or something like that, something really unusual. 29 meters long, I think. And it was, I think race day, I think, was the first time I'd ever worn goggles. So yeah, practice the goggles beforehand if that applies to you. That's my tip for that one.
Yeah. The agenda for tonight, we're going to go a little bit of a background to triathlon, and then we're just going to run through sort of what would normally happen on the day at Bishopbriggs and just go through each section one by one. So first section, background. Just a quick one, Sean, what is a triathlon? We're just assuming nobody knows anything at this point.
It would be a swim, bike and a run, as I've been telling people for about 30 years, in that order generally.
Yeah. And Stuart, what do we normally do at Bishopbriggs?
So Bishopbriggs is really 5 separate races. There's 3 sort of junior children's races, a novice sort of shorter adult race, and then a sprint distance race. And normally the younger children go off first, followed by the older ones, followed by the novice race, followed by the sprint. And I won't go over the distances, but everybody should know, and that's them up on the table there if you're confused, and they're on the Entry Central website and easy to find out.
So for pre-race stuff, so what equipment should people be looking for, Sean?
Swimming wear, goggles, biking wear and running wear, I think, and probably a towel. One thing you'll notice is if you watch any professional events that the pros don't have much in transition, where the temptation for us mere mortals is to bring everything that you own to the race, put it all in your car or whatever, and then bring it all into transition. So I think generally what you would need in transition is maybe a bit of nutrition. So maybe a gel or something, or just some juice of some kind. Depending on the weather, a waterproof jacket maybe, or a pair of gloves, or a waterproof jacket and a pair of gloves, and a towel. That's probably about it, I think. Lots of people do bring other stuff though, you know, talcum powder and all sorts of things, but I think that's probably the minimum. Yeah, and if you're given
us asked a lot as well as what type of bike.
Well, people have done our race and every kind of bike, you know, whether it's got child seat on the back and just left it on, you know, and people have actually done quite well in triathlons and mountain bikes and stuff like that. So whatever bike you're used to, I'd bring that one. You know, if this is your first race, lots of opportunity to go faster at some point in the future. Let's just be comfortable in a bike that we know how to ride, I think, would be the best sort of tip for that, I think.
And Stuart, is there any specific rules that definitely have to be covered for bringing?
No, I suppose just to sort of follow on from it, probably good. It's obviously at the end of April, so the weather can be very variable. Some years it's been glorious sunshine, other years it's been a sort of gale and snow and so on. So as an adult, probably sensible to bring something warm that you can put on the bike. For the junior races, we have stipulated in the race briefing that they must all bring something warm to wear. And if the weather is bad, everybody will, all the juniors will have to put that on. So everybody's penalised to the sort of same extent. Obviously for adults, if you've got it, you can put it on. We're not going to insist you wear it, but it may be sensible if the weather is really bad. So that's, I suppose, a rule for juniors that you brought it because you won't be allowed to race with it if the weather's bad.
And for on the bike and on the run, you don't have, you could just wear the one pair of shoes for the bike and the run. There's no specific requirement.
Oh, exactly, yes, yeah. And in a way that sort of simplifies it. You just put on the one pair of shoes right at the start, and especially if you've never used bike shoes before, I certainly wouldn't do that in a race. They will make you a little bit faster, but if you're doing the event for the first time, you probably want to be safe and comfortable rather than, you know, going for a sort of Alistair Brownlee, jumping on your bike with the shoes on, racing off, and then jumping out your bike in bare feet at the end. Because unless you're good at that, you can actually, you know, make a fool of yourself and end up on the tarmac with blood everywhere. So it's not good unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah. What do people have to bring to registration, Stuart?
Okay, so this applies only to the sprint race and only for people who have said they're Triathlon Scotland members and paid £6 less to enter. Triathlon Scotland are very good at it. We pay a levy to Triathlon Scotland for everybody taking part in the race, and they're very good at checking up on race numbers and so on. So if you've said you're a member, then we'd like to see your membership card so that we don't have to pay the £6 that you obviously haven't paid. So you need to bring your Triathlon Scotland membership card with you. And to get that, you have to log into the Triathlon Scotland website and print it out or bring an email copy of it or whatever. That's mine there. We'll take cash. This year we couldn't process card payments, but this year we have a card reader. So we won't be giving out your race number unless you pay the £6 or show your Triathlon Scotland membership card. That doesn't apply to the novice race and it doesn't apply to the youth races. So you'll turn up at registration and you'll be given a race number, which they've just arrived today. That's number 1. So some lucky person will get number 1. So you get a race number, a number to go around the seat post in your bike, a timing chip, which you should put on your left ankle. It's recommended your left because the right side is where all your chain and all your gear stuff is, so you're more likely to get it caught. And you'll be given a race memento and a snack, and you'll get your race number written on your arm and your leg. That's really what happens at registration. And hopefully it won't be busy and there will be enough people to process people quickly, but I suggest allowing plenty of time for that just in case it is busy and there's queues and so on.
What's the, do you know the rough timings yet for the registration?
Yes, I think they're maybe on another slide. Registration, I think, opens at 9:45, or 8:45, and then the transition opens at 9. and that's then the time of the briefings for each thing. We run a sort of rolling transition at Bishopbriggs. So if you're there as a child or taking, a child with you, you need to be there pretty sharp. But if you're a good swimmer and you're going to be in one of the last sprint heats, you don't need to turn up early to register. You just need to be in time for the sprint briefing at 11:40. So you get a bit more of a sort of a relaxed morning, but and what you'll be allowed to register late. And because the transition's rolling, you just have to be wary when you go into transition. Other people will be racing to not get in their way. But yeah, that's the timings up there.
Just a question about car parking for people like me who are not very good at remembering their car. Is there car parking there, or is it local?
Yep, I think there's an overall wee sort of slide, but there are 2 primary schools that we've been allowed to use as car parking, and we prefer if you could park there if possible. Obviously, there's a lot of on-street parking there, but most of it's all a residential area. And if you park out somebody's house and the people get upset, they complain to the leisure centre, they complain to the police, and it all makes the whole thing quite problematic. Although I do accept it's a public road and you can park there, but just to make everything easier, we prefer if you could park in the designated school car parks if possible until they fill up. And if you do end up parking in the street, just be mindful that people do live there and don't block their driveways and stuff like that.
Okay, Rasty, I'm going to do a quick overview of the venue and course. I've got some photos here that you supplied, Stuart, so I'll just bring them up if you want to talk about them.
Okay, yep.
Yep.
So that's an overview, I suppose, of the whole thing. The bottom right-hand corner is Hilton Road, and that leads to the main Bishopbriggs Road where you come in. Are you able to point, Ian, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, can I? So that's Hilton, right? And then the 2 blue areas are where they're the sort of multi-use games areas where the school car parking is. That's one there.
Right.
Oh,
and
then we're to the sort of right-hand side.
Hidden
so it's Meadowburn and Balmildy primary schools. And then the leisure centre is the sort of, that's it exactly there. And the car park just to the below that is where transition is. And then the bike route runs out along Balmildy Road up the top of the screen. And then sort of along the top, you can see the Forth and Clyde Canal, and the run route is just, along that direction for the sprint, and then the novice goes whatever to the right. So that's just a general overview of where you can park. Obviously, how that's all residential roundabout. You can park there, but obviously be sensible if you're going to do that. And where the leisure centre is. And I suppose we could move on to the next. Oh, and right, that is the bike route with the leisure centre in the bottom right-hand corner. It's a very straightforward bike route. It's impossible to get lost on it. There's no junctions or anything. There's a fairly sort of steepish hill for about 400 metres at the start. Then you go up, make a turn all the way around. And there's a 180-degree turn at the end of the course. And that's probably something that's worthwhile practicing in your bike beforehand, is just making sure that you can turn reasonably competently in the width of a road. Probably not aiming to do it sort of fast if you're in the novice race, to just make sure you can do it. Obviously, if you're going to be really competitive, you can make up a lot of time or lose a lot of time by doing that quickly, but it's better just to do it safely. And the leisure centre turn, there's the similar thing for both the novice and the sprint races. That turn is at the bottom of a steep hill. So I suggest just be very cautious, control your speed on the way down, make the turn safely. Nobody wants to have an accident at it. And even if you are a very skillful cyclist and can go around the corner quickly, just be mindful that other people might not be as skillful as you and are going to slow down quite dramatically in order to make the turn. Just a wee sort of common sense safety point, really, in terms of the bike course. I suppose we're on to the next slide.
Yeah, just to go over the laps. So sprint is
Oh, sorry, yeah. It's sort of sprint 4 laps, 20 kilometres. The novice and the youth will do 2 laps, and the tri-stars just 1 lap or 5 kilometres. So it's 2.5 kilometres out, 2.5 kilometres back, obviously.
And probably worth mentioning, you have to count your own laps, is that right?
Oh, you do, yes. You have to count your own laps. And that's just an overview of the whole of the run course. So that obviously the leisure centre transition, your transitions in the very bottom of the course, you'll run out past the front of the leisure centre take a wee dog leg to the left and then the right, just to avoid a low wall that's there. And then you'll cross the bridge over the canal, go down a fairly steep ramp, and then depending on what race you're doing, you'll either carry straight on or you'll double back in yourself. So the TriStar race goes straight on out to the left to do the 600 meters, and then comes back underneath the bridge and straight back to the leisure centre. Sprint race goes on to the same turn point as the TriStar and then carries on underneath the bridge and all the way up the canal to the bridge at Cadder, where you cross the canal and return on the other side. And the novice race is sort of a hybrid of that. You just cross the bridge, turn, make a sharp turn, and then head up out towards the bridge at Cadder and back again. So it's fairly straightforward, and there's lots of marshals to guide you and, you know, sort of help you and point you the right way. So I don't think anybody's ever got lost. And obviously when you turn up in the day, you're going to register and sort out your bike, and then you've got time just to walk about and make sure you actually know where you're going. And there's lots of people there who can, you know, tell you where you're going, point you in the right direction, offer advice and so on. So nobody should be concerned about getting lost or, you know, unsure where they're going.
Okay, so we look at each section individually now. With the swims, do you want to explain how the heats work?
Okay. So Bishopbriggs altogether, there's going to be 13 heats. It's going to start off with the youngest age groups, the TriStar 2s, then the TriStar 3s, then the youths. There's probably going to be about 3 heats of novices and then 7 heats of sprint. There's 6 lanes in the pool, 6 people to each lane, and you'll be arranged in the lanes according to your swim time. So that's why we've asked and mentioned later on that you submit a fairly accurate swim time. And I know at the minute, a lot of people have really no idea how quickly they're going to swim, but you've got up until, I think, 16th of April to submit a different swim time. And it makes the event more pleasant for you and for everybody else if your swim time's approximately correct, because you'll be in with people of similar swimming ability to you. So 6 people in the lane, all hopefully swimming roughly the same speed. Fastest person to the front, but it often doesn't work out like that. And you will do your, whatever it is, 8, 12, 20 or 35 lengths. When you have 2 lengths, so there are people there counting the lengths for you, but it's obviously up to you to count as well and be responsible for that. When you have 2 lengths to go, you'll get a tap in the head with a kickboard or a float to let you know 2 lengths to go. You do your next 2 and then you come out of the pool. If you find that your swim time, if you're being held up by the person in front, you can tap their leg, and at the end of the length, they should stop and let you pass. And the same applies to you, obviously. If you find there's somebody behind you tapping your leg, you should stop at the end and let them pass. I'd maybe add a wee bit of caution about just getting a wee bit sort of carried away about trying to pass people, and certainly I'd recommend letting the race settle down for maybe 6 lengths or something. Obviously at the start, everybody's really hyped up and absolutely raring to go, and you're very sort of fresh and fit, and everybody hears off in the first length, and you might find the person in front of you, you think they're a bit slower than you, but there's an amazing sort of drafting effect. It's much easier to be the second person in the lane than the first person in the lane. So you might think the person in the lane in front of you is really slow, and you tap them in the first length, and then they stop and they let you pass. And the second length, you're struggling at the front, and you end up, everybody in the lane wastes time just tapping each other and letting everybody pass, and so on and so on. So obviously, if the person in front of you after a few lengths is much slower, absolutely go ahead and pass them. But I'd just be sort of slightly cautious and make sure that you've all sort of settled into your rhythm and the adrenaline has all calmed down a wee bit. And I think that's really all I've got to say about the heats. So a few people have emailed saying, can you stop at the end of a length? Absolutely. If you're feeling tired, there's no problem at all stopping, taking a minute or 2, getting your breath back, etc. And you may find, I've often found it's quite a blessing in disguise to be tapped, and then you can stop and have a rest and let the person go. You shouldn't stop in the middle of a lane, because that gets in everybody's way, unless obviously you are in distress and got a problem. So most of the pool is fairly shallow, so if you do have some issue, you can stop and you can stand up. You could hold on to the lane rope, etc., etc. Somebody's asked what swimming strokes you can do. You can swim in any stroke you want, with the exception of backstroke, because swimming in backstroke or lying on your back and putting your arm in the air is regarded as a distress signal. And if you were to do that, the lifeguards will probably help you get out of the pool safely. And if you give a distress signal and come out of the pool, then unfortunately that's your race over. You can't do that and think, well, I'm going to carry on now because I feel fine. If you are a bit tired, stop at the end of the lane, get your breath back, and then progress again. But I wouldn't, unless you really need to and you're genuinely having a problem, abandon the swim. As we said before, if your swim time's wrong, you've got up until midnight on Sunday, the 19th of April to correct that. If you have an Entry Central account, you can alter the swim time yourself. If you don't have an Entry Central account, there's a contact form on the Entry Central website that will go to Russell Snowden, who's dealing with the entries. Or if you can't find or use the contact form on Entry Central, you can email me at events@glasgowtriathlonclub.co.uk and I can alter the swim time for you. So I think that's really everything I have to say about the swim. I'm just looking at the chat here. Can we swim breaststroke? Yes, you can. Anything other than backstroke. Is the swim not 30 lengths? It is. I apologize if I said 35. It's 16 for the novice and 30 for the sprint. And it's a 25 meter pool. Yeah, 25 meter pool, 30 lengths.
And we should probably reiterate that there's people counting your lengths for you, and they're going to tap you in the head. So yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so you don't have to worry too much about.
You don't really have to worry too much about counting, no.
Yeah, and Sean, have you got any advice and tips for people who maybe doing their race for the first time?
Yeah, I think Stuart had a couple of good points there. One is, the swim is the first part of quite a long race, so going off like a rocket is probably not something that you want to do. Another one's probably just about the lane counting. So when you're doing the swimming and you're a bit excitable and maybe it's your first race and you're counting and maybe your count doesn't tally with the person who's doing the counting and tapping you on the head, I would say 9 times out of 10, they're probably counting more accurately than you are because they've got less distractions. So if it all goes wrong and you think you swam 2 lengths too many or anything like that, first race, I would just take that as part of the adventure and just try not to get too excitable over it. Don't let it ruin your day if you think that's happened or not. Just try and swim to a nice pace you can sustain. As Stuart says, if you go off the first 2 lengths like an Olympic athlete, you're going to have to slow down because if you're an Olympic athlete, you wouldn't be in our race. So yeah, not too fast. That's my tip.
And our recommendation always for swimming is to join a triathlon club and come along to sessions. Could you just tell us a little bit about what we have in Glasgow Triathlon Club? Because we offer a couple of interesting courses for people who might not be so experienced.
Yep. So we've got Learn to Swim Front Crawl for Triathlon, which is probably where, if it's a novice and you didn't learn to swim as a child, where you might be. So you can come along to that. It's a course. It lasts 8 weeks and you can learn to swim front crawl maybe better than you do or more confidently or with better technique. So you get the same, you can go faster for less effort. We've got a couple of other ones. So we've got normal swim lanes just for people who think their front crawl is pretty good and they can just improve their fitness, like Stuart was talking about. And then we've got another course where we teach people to swim all the other strokes that we were just mentioning, including backstroke, which is safe to do. But it's more of a kind of off-season fun type course. And we've got lots of swim sessions throughout the week.
I think the main bit of advice I would say about swimming is not to worry about it too much. I did the Edinburgh Triathlon many years ago, and at the end of the swim, I got out of the pool and I went to the changing facilities and I dried my hair using the hairdryer before getting on the bike. So don't worry about it. You can get away with a lot of things in triathlon. Transition 1. Maybe first, Stuart, maybe best to explain just what happens when you get out the pool and how you get around to the transition area, is it?
Okay, I think there's a few slides that sort of illustrate that. Maybe I'm not. So that. Oh, that's the overall, right? So yeah, so you'll come out. The pool at the bottom right.
Oh, no, sorry, there.
And corner swim exit. You run up the back of the leisure centre and into transition, and then you'll go through transitions diagonally. You'll enter at top right, you'll leave bottom left. So everybody's got the same distance to travel. So nobody's, advantaged or disadvantaged. And then I think there's a few slides just sort of showing coming out the pool. So that's what transition looks like before anybody's in it, and it's nice and empty. And then the next slide is, I think, the exit. So that's the exit from the swimming pool. It's pretty straightforward. It's the fire exit at the back of the pool. Obviously, when you come out the pool, it's a tiled area, it's wet. So I'd recommend that you walk and nobody slips and falls and hurts themselves, because that would be a bad start to your day. Once you're outside, it's tarmac, so it's much less slippy and it's arrowed. And then the next slide shows where you're at the back of the leisure centre. And again, it's pretty obvious where you're going. And then you get to the next slide, which shows transition. And that is transition only just starting to fill up. So you run in already a bit disorientated, having swum, and you're faced with all these bikes. And the point really is, just when you've racked your bike, it's worthwhile spending a few minutes at the start, making sure you know how you're going to go through transition to find your bike. So yeah, you can count, and my bike's in the third rack down, second bike in from the left, or whatever, because you can waste ages running about like a loony trying to find your bike in transition if you don't know where it is. And the transition in Bishopbriggs is reasonably small. There are some races with 4,000 bikes in transition. So if you don't know where you're going, you could waste hours potentially finding your bike. Just in terms of the rules around about that, you're not allowed to mark your spot in transition, which means basically you're not allowed to do anything to make it easier for you to find your bike. You can't put chalk in the ground, marking your route, or talcum powder. You can't put a great big helium birthday balloon hanging from your bike, etc., etc. You just need to make sure yourself you know how to get to your bike. And in fact, at Bishopbriggs, some people could be very lucky. You could be like the competitor there with a great big arrow pointing them to their bike. But you might not be that lucky, and you just need to know yourself how to find your way into transition. So you're coming to transition, make your way to your bike. And then I think the next slide just sort of illustrates a point that the first thing you must do before you touch your bike is you have to put on your helmet, and you have to clip up your helmet. So your helmet must be on and clipped up anytime you're in contact with your bike. So obviously the same applies at the other end. You must rack your bike and let go of your bike before you take your helmet off. And then you can see in the background, there's a couple of Triathlon Scotland technical officials who are there just really for sort of safety and to educate people. And in a race like this, just to sort of make sure it's fair and I suppose education. But we can talk a bit more about rules and technical officials sort of later. So that's, I suppose, the process coming through transition. Get your helmet on, and then you can think about your trainers to go on your bike, or wheeling out your bike and putting on your running shoes or whatever, your bike shoes or whatever it is you do. The other thing about transition, you're not allowed to ride your bike in transition. So you must wheel your bike out of transition and cross what's called the mount line. So you must be across the mount line that's clearly marked on the ground, and there'll be somebody there pointing it out to you. And you must do that. But you must have crossed the mount line before you get on your bike. And you might all remember 2012 Olympics, Johnny Brownlee got a penalty because I think I can't remember who mounted or he dismounted, but he hadn't crossed the line when he did whatever he did. So in this race, you're unlikely to get a significant penalty for that, but the technical official might stop you and just say, remember, don't cross the line or whatever. So I think that's really all I've got to say about transition, unless again, if anybody's got any questions. Oh, I've just seen, do you need a tri-suit or a wetsuit? The answer to the wetsuit bit is definitely not. It's a pool swim, so the water is warm. I think you probably could wear a wetsuit. I don't know if there's anything in the rules to say you can't, but nobody would because it's a swimming pool. In terms of a tri-suit for anybody who doesn't know is a sort of one-piece garment that you'd wear during the swim, the bike and the run. And it's got a bit of padding in the bottom of it to make it more comfortable to cycle in. A lot of people will have tri-suits, and especially at the faster end of the field, but there is no need to have one, but it might make your day a wee bit faster because you're not having to change. But there's really no reason why you can't swim in a swimming costume or trunks as a man and then come out and put on a t-shirt as a man, or I think as a woman, you can run and cycle in your swimming costume. The only rule about dress is that I think your torso must be covered. So if you're a man and you're swimming in trunks, you need to put on a t-shirt. If you're a woman, you could do it in a swimsuit, though that probably wouldn't be terribly comfortable. You can obviously do it in a swimsuit and then put on bike shorts and bike jerseys and jackets and whatever you want afterwards. So really quite a range of clothing options, depends on your budget, how serious you are, how often you've been doing it, etc., etc. And as Ian said, I think there's probably no reason why you couldn't come out of the swimming pool and go to the changing room in the swimming pool and get undressed in a cubicle and put on something that you're more comfortable wearing if that was your choice. Obviously, it'll be a bit slower, but if you're just wanting to have the experience of doing a triathlon and enjoy the day, that's fine. You're not allowed to be nude in transition. I think that would be a disqualification offence. So obviously people don't do that. You could wrap yourself up in a towel and get changed and so on. So really, whatever you're comfortable doing. A lot of people will have tri-suits, but certainly in the novice race, a lot of people won't.
Yeah, there's a question saying, can I wear flip-flops from the pool? Yes,
you can. You could leave them at the end of the lane, put on your flip-flops and go out to transition. And the same thing if you need, prescription glasses to see or inhalers or whatever. A lot of people would leave that with the lane counter at the end of the lane who can look after your glasses. As soon as you get out the pool, you maybe need your glasses to get safely out into transition. Or if you felt you might need an inhaler for asthma during the swim, again, you could leave that and then you can stop at the end of the length and use it if that was necessary.
And Sean, any good tips for performance and for beginners or things people should watch out for?
Yeah, I think avoid running on the side of the pool. I think that's probably the first hazard in transition. And my sort of MO for transition is to walk fast generally rather than try and run. Because if you maybe got bike shoes on, you're trying to run your bike shoes with your bike. Again, that's a bit of a trip hazard. And it's one of these things, the faster you try and do it, sometimes the more stuff you forget. So I think you want to be organised, go at a reasonable speed purposefully, but you don't need to be sprinting about the places. We sort of, we're still we've just finished the first part of the triathlon really when we've done the swim. There's still a lot to go, and how you're going to run and cycle is probably more important than how fast you're going to run about the transition, unless you're at the point the end of the race, obviously, but more important to do the things correctly rather than to be doing them particularly fast, I think.
And that's when you come out of transition onto the bike course. So again, that's a fairly complicated area. That's showing both the bike coming out, the bike going back in, and the run coming out. And the purpose really of that slide is, again, just to sort of make you think beforehand, walk through the course carefully before you've done the swim and just sort of think in your head, where am I going to go? I'm going to come out of transition. Where will I go with my bike? How will I get back in with my bike? How will I navigate my place back into transition? Because obviously you have to drop your bike off where you picked it up. And if you're changing from bike shoes to running shoes, that'll be where your running shoes are. If you're wearing the same trainers, it probably doesn't matter, but if you put your bike in the wrong place, then you'll obstruct somebody else who wants to put that's their spot for their bike. So it's just really a short, be sensible about it, think about it beforehand, because you can lose an awful lot of time. I mean, you could have trained for months really hard, then you can lose lots and lots of time on silly things like not knowing where to find your bike and stuff like that.
And there's lots of volunteers around these areas to sort of make sure that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the rules we've got.
Okay, yep. So as I said, there will be technical officials there. Their job isn't really to disqualify you or give you penalties or anything like that. Certainly not in this sort of level of race. Their role is really to help make the race safe for everybody and to sort of educate you. And you might find that you get what's referred to as a stop and go penalty. So if you haven't clipped up your bike helmet, they might stop you and ask you politely, could you please clip up your bike helmet? And the time it takes you to do that is effectively your sort of penalty. So I wouldn't be worried about, draconian and penalties, losing your masses of time or being disqualified. It's probably almost impossible to be disqualified unless you do something very, very silly. And I was going to say that the British Triathlon rulebook is massive. It runs to 212 pages, but most of it is just common sense and there for safety. And if you act in a safe manner, you're probably unlikely to infringe any of the rules. There are a few sort of specific things that people might get caught out by. You're not allowed to use a mobile phone in transition when the transition is live, and that's when the race is on. And they've changed the rule this year, because obviously people now use their mobile phones for all sorts of things. You are allowed to have your mobile phone and your bike to use for Strava or navigation, or, you know, recording your distances and all of that sort of stuff, but you're not allowed to use it as a communication device. And if you do want to use your phone as a communication device, I think you have to stop your bike, get off your bike, come off the bike course, make your phone call, come back onto the bike course where you left it, etc. So that most people are not going to do that. You're not allowed any kind of music player, so you're not allowed to run, cycle or run with headphones in. And whether that's, I think they all say MP3 players, but obviously that's all sorts of things now that are driving your headphones and so on. So, and it's basically just so that you're able to listen to what's happening round about you, and not, you know, you're listening to music and you cycle in front of somebody or whatever. You're not allowed to dive in the pool, and you'll all be starting in the water. You're not allowed to pass other people in the lane. We talked about that. You have to stop at the end. You're not allowed to mark your spot in transition. We talked about that. You're not allowed to interfere with somebody else's equipment. And that is maybe something you would be disqualified for if you deliberately and you let somebody's bike tires down or whatever. The transition's a fairly small, tight area, so you're not allowed any boxes or bags in transition just because they get in the way of other people. I know in, you know, ITU type transition, they've all got boxes and they all dump their helmets in them and their run shoes and all that sort of stuff. There's not space for that in this race. So you need to take your bags out, put them back in your car, or give them to a friend, or put them in a locker in the swimming pool or whatever. Obviously, no littering, and just sort of common sense, no unsporting behaviours.
So my question just there saying, can you swim with digital goggles that count laps and times?
I do not know the answer to that, but I could find that.
I know the answer to this, Stuart. Yes, you can. So
right.
I've got the Form goggles in there. ITU and blah blah blah.
Right.
So, yeah, you can use those.
Do they work well? No, right?
Yeah, but you know, they tell you how fast or how slow you're going, so that can be an advantage or a disadvantage.
Okay, so onto the bike leg. First of all, how to mount the bike, and different options people have.
Yeah, so I would personally, I would have my shoes on and then give the bike a little push once I'm over the dismount line and get on the bike. I would leave any fancy pants, elastic bands with shoes and that kind of stuff for a different race, particularly because in our race, as soon as you come out of transition, you go straight up a hill. So you want to have good contact with the pedals. You don't want to have your feet on top of your shoes or anything like that. They also leave the bike in quite an easy gear to get up the hill. So yeah, I would, again, walking fast, you know, when you're doing it rather than trying to run and jump on your bike when it's moving. It's probably not going to. I think patience is one of the themes we're going to be talking about for the whole day. Let it all come to you rather than trying to rush it all in your first race.
I think we answered this question before, but just to reiterate, the types of bikes people use can be anything. Really.
You can have anything at all. I don't know if you're allowed a unicycle. I've not seen one of those in a triathlon, but other than that, I've seen every other kind of bike. So yeah, it's not a bike competition. It's a triathlon, so you can use whatever bike you want.
And just for Stuart, I think you answered this already, but quickly again, what happens at the turning points?
Yeah, so we sort of, obviously there's a 180-degree turn in the width of the road at both ends. The far away one, it's flat, so you're going to be fairly slow, but just make it something worthwhile practicing a few times, and be wary of other people who might not be as skillful as you if you're a fast cyclist and can corner quickly. And especially the bottom turn at the leisure centre, you will have come down a hill, you will be going fairly fast. You just need to control your speed and make the turn safely, and be wary of other people who may be going out or may suddenly brake in order to make the turn. Once you've made the bottom turn as well, you just need to be slightly wary that if you're doing a second lap, people will be joining the bike course there from transition. So hopefully you've made your turn, you should be going slowly. They've just got onto their bike, they should be going slowly, but just be aware that there may be, you know, additional people there. And then once you've counted your laps, obviously you make the sharp left turn back into the leisure centre there.
A couple of questions. One says, do you just leave your shoes and t-shirts loose in transition if you're not allowed bags or boxes?
Yes, I'd leave my bike shoes on the ground and my running shoes on the ground. If I was going to wear a t-shirt, I'd probably put the t-shirt on the ground with, my shoes on top, just so it doesn't blow away. And obviously you need to do that, within the space of your bike so other people aren't going to get in the way. But that's not usually a problem. You could put a towel on the ground, your t-shirt on the towel, your shoes on top of the t-shirt so things don't blow away, and have your number pinned onto your t-shirt. Or if you're wearing a tri-suit, have your number on a number belt, which I'd leave with my shoes and so on. So I don't know if that answers that question, or if not, you can.
And if the weather's raining and you've got a waterproof jacket, I would recommend put your waterproof jacket on the top of the pile, and that keeps the rain off everything else, and your clothes are nice and dry for the rest of it. The second question, someone's concerned about their glasses, which they need to cycle and run. I think you answered this already about people with glasses.
Well, obviously, if you're needing them to exit the swimming pool safely, maybe you swim with prescription goggles and without anything. You could leave your glasses with the person at the end of the lane, or if your vision's okay and you just need them to make you see a wee bit better, or sunglasses or whatever, I'd normally leave my glasses in my bike helmet at my bike. But obviously it depends on the value of that, or the value of your glasses, and how much you need them. If they're very expensive and you really need them, it's probably safest to leave them with the marshal at the end of the swim lane, because there will only be 6 people in that lane and 2 marshals. So your glasses should be very safe, and then you can put them on at that point. But if it's just a pair of sunglasses,
I put mine in the glasses case and then put them in the back pocket of my bike top, and that way when I put my bike top on, I can feel it at the back and then just
your glasses, right? Yeah.
Okay. And are there any specific road rules for biking? I'll probably best to talk about the distance between bikes.
Yeah, there's another wee slide about that, I think. So in terms of oops.
Oh, I must have missed out that slide.
So obviously, you need to be sensible in your bike. You need to obey the highway code. And although the road is almost closed to traffic, there are a couple of farms and houses on it. So the people who live in those houses may enter from not the leisure centre end of the course, but from the far end of the course to get in and out of their houses. There's also a fire station on Hilton Road, and obviously the fire service has right of access. To my knowledge, there's never been an incident where the fire engines have come through. Obviously, if you hear sirens and flashing lights, I'd recommend getting off the road fairly quickly. So obey the highway code. You're not allowed to cross the center point of the road at any point. Obviously, there's a few sharp bends without, I think, a white line in the middle, but you need to keep to your own side of the road. And then the other thing that people worry about is drafting as well. So it's not a sort of Tour de France type race where you can get an advantage by sitting really close to the person in front of you. It's supposed to be an individual time trial, and the rules are that you're meant to keep 10 meters or about 6 bike lengths away from the person in front. And for most people, that's not an issue. You just leave a sensible gap and you're absolutely fine. There are usually a couple of motorcycle-based technical officials, more again for the people who are there to win the event and may push the rules as far as they go. But for the great majority of people, be sensible, and if you are a wee bit close, then you'll be given a friendly warning to sort of drop back. As I said, it's really for education, apart from a couple of people who are there to win and will push the whole thing, as much as possible. And
then want to transition again once you come off the bike. So again, probably Stuart, best if you just go through the rules first for
that. Where are we? So this is coming back into transition. So you have to be off your bike with your feet on the ground before you get to the dismount line. And again, there are people there telling you when you're getting up to slow down and to get off. And then you'd walk or run your bike back into transition, rack your bike where you picked it up from. And then once your bike's safely away and it's racked, then you can take your helmet off and put on your bike shoes or whatever it is you're going to do. And I think that's everything else we've talked about. Bike helmet on, no cycling, drafting, etc. And obviously no littering. It's a public road and we don't want gel wrappers and all sorts of stuff all over the road. I think if you accidentally litter and you're seen doing it by a technical official, you'll be asked to stop and retrieve the litter. But if you don't do that, then that is one of the things that you could potentially be disqualified for. That and, you know, silly, aggressive, unsporting behaviour. Everything else you'll probably be asked just to correct your sort of whatever your mistake.
Sean, we've got a question about overtaking. Do you just want to explain how you overtake on the bike? Like,
yeah, if you're coming up to overtake someone, you've got you have to make sure that you go past them, and then is it 10 meters, 6 bike lengths you're supposed to. So you need to, if you're going to pass someone, you can't just go past them and drop in front of them. You have to make good headway past them. So really, when you're overtaking someone, you want to make sure that they're definitely going slower than you are, and you want to progress past them. And then once you've got your 10-meter gap, then you can pull in front of them. Generally, it's fine. It's not going to be an issue unless what can happen is if 2 of you are kind of cycling at the same speed and you're trying not to draft, you can end up you overtake someone, they overtake you, you overtake someone, they overtake you, that kind of thing. But yeah, it is a race. You are supposed to try and overtake people. Yeah, so that's, I wouldn't get too upset about that. Again, as Stuart was saying, the technical officials are there to try and educate you. They're more likely to say something to you rather than, oh, you're disqualified. So, yeah.
Again, it's one of these things. I think if people haven't done a race, they tend to worry about this, but it's not like super strict in our events. No one's going to do you for being 9 meters ahead of somebody instead of 10 meters ahead. As long as you've made the reasonable effort to go past and reasonable distance, then you'll be all right and it should be okay. In transition to Sean, just want to go over a little bit just what it's like to get off the bike and then to have to start running again, because people probably will not have done that.
Yeah, so I think that if I remember back to my first ever triathlon when I got off the bike and I started trying to run, I don't even think I'd ever practiced that. And it was a rather odd sensation. So you basically get blood pooling with the blood's in the wrong kind of muscles for running. So initially it can feel pretty strange when you start to run, as if almost you've got kind of spongy legs or something like that. It does, once you do more events, it does kind of go away a little bit, but yeah, it can take a good maybe kilometre to start to run normally if you're not used to that. Good news for the run is though that the run's almost completely flat along the canal. So, you know, you should be able to, if you've any energy left, and you should keep some for the run, it's a good place to try and overtake people. And, you know, if maybe running's your thing and swimming isn't, then again, that's a good place to overtake people. But it's a great run, and at this course, it's flat as a pancake on a canal. You probably won't get a better one. It's not on a road. There's no rough pavement. So yeah, it's a good run course.
And is there any rules for the run course, Stuart?
Don't think so, no. Well, obviously, and you know, other than, you know, don't be silly and push people and all that sort of stuff. You know, just enjoy the run. And you know, you're getting near the end, and if you've got energy left, put in a big effort. There's usually good support at the finish line, cheering people on and wanting everybody to do well. I think it's a very sort of positive event, Bishopbriggs. Everybody wants everybody to do well. There's very few people there, you know, in it to win it at all cost and, you know, hope somebody else doesn't win it. It's a very friendly, supportive type race.
Yeah, maybe keep left in the canal path. That's one.
All right, okay, yes.
Yeah, because it is a canal path. No one's ever fallen in as far as we know. But yeah,
that's a challenge. Yeah, and probably just to reiterate, so there is drafting on the bike, but on the run, you can run so pretty close to everyone else, can't you?
Yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, yeah. Pick a big tall person to run behind who'll break the wind out of your way.
Yeah. And then after the race, so when you cross the finish, just want to explain what happens when you cross the finish line, and then what happens.
So as we said, the race is chip timed. So you'll when you leave the swimming pool, when you go through transition, all that stuff, the chip will record that. And then at the very end, you'll get your sort of finish time. I think the timing van has a wee manual thing, so you could put in your race number and get a wee printout showing your swim time, your transition times, and your bike time, and so on. or else you can wait a couple of hours and the results will be on the website, the Glasgow Triathlon Club website. There is a prize giving shortly. I think there's maybe 3 separate prize givings. There's a junior one fairly early on, shortly after the junior races have taken place. Then there's a novice prize giving, basically once everybody's completed the novice course, and then there's the sprint prize giving towards the end of the day. So obviously worth hanging about if you think you're in the top sort of 3 positions, or even if you're not, just cheer on the people who have got prizes. But the results will be available hopefully a few hours afterwards on the website for you to pour over and see how fast you swam and all that sort of stuff.
And clearing transition of your equipment, can you do that?
And, yeah, and again, obviously at the end of the day, the car park needs to be returned to being a car park really as soon as possible. So once you've finished your race, it's a good idea if you just, you might have to wait a few minutes, but go in, get your bike, take it out, and take it away so that the transition is clear, so we can get the whole area cleared up. In order to collect your bike, you will need your race number, and your race number must match the number that we've given you to attach onto your bike. And that's just so that you can't turn up with a rubbish bike and then disappear with a 10 grand bike at the end of it, just to try and keep the bike security as good as possible. So people often, they finish the race and they throw their number in the bin because they're maybe not had a great race or whatever, although they're lovely numbers. I hope you'll keep it as a souvenir, but keep your race until you've retrieved your bike, just as a sort of security for the bikes.
And some good recovery tips for how you might feel the next day, Sean?
I would say light exercise the next day is probably the best prescription. You want to keep moving the next day, something kind of nice and light, wee gentle swim. Could come to our swim session if you want at Bishopbriggs on Monday morning after it. After a race, I like to have a chocolate milk or something, or something like that, nice cup of coffee. Next day, I would say, light exercise. And then, probably by the Wednesday or Thursday, you probably feel fine. You probably have recovered from it. And the Sunday night is traditionally when you go home, have a few drinks, and then enter your next triathlon. So, because you've forgotten already how hard it was. So
that was going to be my tip. Don't sign up for the Ironman immediately after the race. Give it a couple of days to enjoy it, and then sign up later. Yeah. And volunteering, so race can't take place unless people volunteer to help. And Stuart?
There's always opportunities to help. If you're bringing along friends and family to spectate or whatever, we'd welcome people to marshal. There is an email address. If you're interested, somebody who'd want to help out, just email me at the events.glasgowtriathlonclub.co.uk and I can pass it on to the appropriate person. That's my mobile number below that as well. We've talked about the timing changes before. A lot of volunteering jobs that people get a bit worried about. Oh my gosh, you're standing in a path directing people or things like that. There's a lot of job. It needs a lot of manpower to make the race work, and a lot of the jobs maybe aren't very challenging, and most people do much more complicated jobs and things like that in their day-to-day life. It's really more numbers of people than specific skills we need on the day to help make the race work. So any assistance with volunteering is gratefully appreciated. Thank you.
I'm conscious that we're just about out of time. So if you have any further questions or anything else that we haven't covered tonight, if you could send an email to either Stuart to the events at Glasgow Triathlon Club or myself at president at Glasgow Triathlon Club, then we'll update the website and get any questions and answers there. We've also got a Facebook page now for Bishopbriggs Triathlon, so if you've got any questions, please just put the question on there and someone will answer it as soon as possible, and we'll get back to you. Other than that, I'd just like to thank Sean and Stuart both for their time tonight to answer all the questions.
Sorry, just before people go, just one other thing. If you're a person who requires any additional sort of assistance because of an impairment or a disability or whatever, we would sort of appreciate if you got in touch and we can maybe try and make the race as accessible to you as possible. Obviously, we want to try and make it as inclusive as possible and help people out as much as we can in order to allow them to sort of compete fully in the race. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, right. I'll let everyone go. Okay. See you later. Cheers.
Thank you very much.